My dad's life is actually a very interesting story. It started when he was a young boy. He grew up in Detroit, Michigan. And in the summers, he'd go to his grandfather's farm in northern Michigan and play with his buddy. And he and his buddy would have toy soldiers, and they'd build toy cannons, and they'd shoot pencils out of them. And when they ran out of soldiers, they'd start making them out of the clay. His parents separated, and he lived with his dad, and his sister lived with his mom. And about a year later, he was living with his dad, enjoying life, going to movies in downtown Detroit, watching Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton and all the really good comedians, watching King Kong, seeing movies that I think influenced him. King Kong was a stop-motion character. His dad died in a car accident when he was 9 or 10. And so he had to take a train by himself out to California, where his mother had moved. His mother's new husband didn't want Art around. So Art ended up, after a year of living there with them, he ended up in a halfway house, kind of an orphanage. And a really nice lady at this halfway house found a man named Joseph W. Clokey to adopt my dad. This man had just lost his wife to cancer, and his friend says, why don't you adopt a young boy to have a companion with in life? So he miraculously connected up with my dad and adopted my dad. Turns out that was a big stroke of luck, because Grandpa Clokey, this is during the Depression when nobody had money, and Grandpa Clokey was a music teacher at Pomona College, which was a renowned college, and he had a good salary for the day. So he'd be teaching during the year, and then in the summers he would take my dad to Canada or Mexico or Siberia or Alaska, all these places they went, with a film camera he'd bought my dad. My dad would film in these adventures. He had my dad go to a prep school called Webb School there in Claremont, near Pomona College. And at that school, he became best friends with Bill Webb, whose dad owned that school, and Ray Alf, who was the inspiring geology teacher of that school. And in the summers, they would go on geology trips to the Nebraska Badlands, to other places in the California desert, you name it, they went. And they had these geology explorations. And it was all these adventures he had with his dad. In the Mexico desert, they'd paint watercolors. They'd do oil paintings. They would film, like I said, in Siberia and Alaska, and just have a great companionship together. I've got footage that my dad took in the 30s up at Mount Rainier, and footage of him sliding down glaciers in Alaska that probably don't exist anymore because of global warming. But even during World War II, they actually, the military asked for my dad's footage because nobody had filmed Siberia. So these adventures that Dad had, even though it was a tragedy that he lost his parents, and it was, getting adopted by a Renaissance man who was a musician, a painter, an artist, and who was a great dad. That time with his dad, I think, is the reason Gumby became so popular, because Gumby were the adventures of Gumby. My dad always said, it's the adventures of Gumby. So, the adventures he had as a kid, he would impart on Gumby episodes. And, with Gumby, you could have any adventure you want. You could walk into a book and you could be anywhere. Present, future, past. It's pretty exciting. And there's a lot of heart in Gumby, and I think that's because of the love my grandpa gave my dad, and that the heart came through.